Welcome to the Parenting on the Spectrum show with board-certified behavior analyst and infant-toddler development specialist, Theresa Alexander Inman. Parenting on the Spectrum dives into real stories, challenges, and triumphs, offering invaluable insights and support for families on your unique journey. Let's get into the episode.
Welcome. So excited to have with us today Ms. Carol Muleta. She is the founder of the Parenting 411, where she equips parents to connect with their children and, to reach their full potential. She supports them in that area, and she'll tell you much, much more about that. Welcome, Carol.
Hello, Theresa. Thank you so much for having me today.
You are most welcome, and thank you for taking the time to be here to share with us some very important information, Parenting 411.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. So tell us, Carol, what is the Parenting 411?
Well, it's a platform that I created for parents, and it's my mission there to give parents tools and strategies to consciously connect with their children, confidently teach them skills for life, and just courageously tap into the joy of the parenting journey. So I host the Parenting 411 podcast. I do keynotes for corporations, community organizations, schools, where I speak to those parent groups to equip them in those particular areas.
And we know how needed that is, especially today.
Absolutely. So many parents feel like they're disconnected from their children because of electronics and the social media scene. And more, they're just so connected to their friends and even strangers who are influencing them.
Yes. And that is tragic because we don't know these people. As parents, you don't know who they are. Who is influencing your child? And we should be, as parents, the biggest influencer of our children. And somehow that got lost.
I absolutely agree with that. And the thing is, I tell parents that just as in the old days, before social media and electronic devices that everyone has, you decided how long your child could spend on the playground in real life. So you are still in charge. You still decide how much time they can spend on the digital playground.
Oh. And how do they do that amidst of the protests and the tantrums and all the things that go with that? Because I think a lot of times parents give up because it's just too much work. It's too stressful. They have enough stressors going on. So how do they navigate that with grace, Carol?
Well, you've got to, first of all, start with your values. What it is that you want your child to experience, and you're with an eye toward the adult that you hope they become. And then you work backward from that. And so you decide the right time based on your values, your family's goals, the time that your child can have a device, that your child can get on social media platforms. And so once you have decided that it's okay for them to use those tools, then have a conversation. Like, what are their desires? What are their goals about being on those devices? And then you come in and talk about your concerns, and you remind them of where you stand as a family in terms of how you engage with people in the real world and in the electronic world. You define the rules of engagement, and you talk about what the boundaries are. And again, it's based on your values, but also safety. And then the next big thing that parents have to do that can be hard is to model discipline on devices, because they're always watching everything that we do. And in all things, strive for balance. And I tell parents that we shouldn't shy away from technology because it's certainly useful. Technology, I tell them, can be a tool for sure to help us get things done. It can be a toy, meaning it can entertain us. And that's okay too. But it should never be a tyrant. It should not decide how we're going to live our lives.
Oh my goodness, words of wisdom, Miss Carol. Thank you. The part that really stands out to me is engaging the child in deciding, okay, what is your goal with this? What are you looking to attain, achieve, or whatever it is by being on this device, on this website, on whatever this thing is. So that way they have a part in it, because we know when we engage children in the process, then they're more likely to you know, follow that. They're more likely to engage, because you've made it proactive, and they're more likely
Exactly.
to engage with purpose is the word I'm looking for.
With purpose, absolutely. And this is not any different from what I experienced with my own sons who are in their mid-20s. They're young adults now. And it was the same thing with TV. Like, I didn't allow them to just sit in front of the TV scrolling through channels, like with no plan. I didn't want them to be passive consumers of media. I wanted them to be intentional, like turn on the TV at a particular time because you're going to watch a particular thing. Now, I know that surfing, you can discover some things sometimes, even on online, that you didn't know before. And that's okay. But to just sit there on the couch waiting to be entertained and waiting to be engaged, like putting that power in someone else's hands, is just not a productive use of your time. And that's the same thing today, even though, children have moved beyond TV and they really spend so much more time on their devices. But it's the same principle.
Absolutely. It's like, how is this moving you forward, right? How is this watching this show moving you forward? And one thing I mentioned to my son one day was, so you're watching somebody else make money right now.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
So, yeah, like, how is it benefiting you? If you're learning from it, absolutely. However,
Yes.
it's passive entertainment, and I mean, not to say that I don't watch TV and I don't engage in passive entertainment. I do, because I think sometimes we just need that downtime just to watch something mindless, as my mother-in-law would say. However,
there's a time for that. As I said, it can be a tool. It can be a tool. It can be a toy, and it can be a teacher. But it should never be a tyrant. You define the rules of engagement, and you use technology for your good. Yes. Don't let it use you for the good of others.
Exactly. Oh my goodness, that is so powerful. Thank you. Thank you. Now, what made you decide to fall into this parenting 411 realm? Like, what was the spark in you? What was the thing that sparked that in you?
Well, I'm the mom of twin sons, as I mentioned earlier. And when they were toddlers, one son was diagnosed with pervasive developmental delays. And so once I read that, thick report about what he couldn't do and what he wouldn't do, they had the audacity to talk about what he wouldn't do. And so when my husband and I assessed the different specialists that he'd need to work with, I was like, I can't have somebody else driving him around. So I just never went back to work after maternity leave. Mm-hmm. And so I just began this course of learning so much more about child development than I might have otherwise had this challenge not emerged. Mm-hmm. And then marrying that with parenting as well, because the fact that they were twins, I wanted to nurture them as individuals. Mm-hmm. So that's really how it started. I earned my first certification. I formed a company, my first parenting company, with another mom. And then I moved on from there and launched the Parenting 411 as a multimedia platform to reach parents. And my mission is to deliver information parents need from sources they can trust, because I was that mom searching for information and I needed to know who I could trust.
Yes, because there is so much out there. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
And sometimes it's scary what you found. I mean, somebody mentioned this to me and I was just like, oh my gosh, like some of the things that they said, how you cure autism, the concoction, and they were dangerous substances in that mix. And I thought, you would not drink this regularly. This is a poison.
Yes.
And it's in something to cure your child. And again, we're not here to cure anybody of anything, because I don't think there's anything wrong with autistic children. This is why I do
Right.
this show.
Yes.
They are gifted just like every other child. Our
Mm-hmm.
goal here is to find their gifting and help them navigate their way. We're not doing it for them, because when we do for them, we create a culture of learned helplessness.
I agree with you so much. And even as I said, when my son was diagnosed with delays, I wanted to understand more about it, what he needed. And I decided, I said back then, I mean, he was a toddler. I said, I don't know if he'll be a lawyer or a landscaper, but whatever it is, he's going to be the best, because of what I saw in him. I saw the wheels turning. He needed some help integrating everything. And that is really the case. He's very disciplined. What he knows, he knows. Okay. And he's a very good advocate for himself. I mean, those were kinds of traits that I saw in him, even in the midst of a diagnosis with all kinds of labels and those kinds of things. So
yeah, which is awesome. And thank you for looking beyond the label, because sometimes
yes,
parents get stuck in that. Well, he's got, so therefore, and that does not define your child. A label is just a way to get, to direct you to the services that you might
yes,
need. And that's all, for me, that's all it is. When a parent says, my child is autistic, can you help me? I want to show you how to help your child and teach your child how to help themselves. And how
that's the thing. That is the thing. It was just so important for me. Obviously, you want your children to be good communicators, and it's both children, right? Even his brother. I said, because I want them both to be confident communicators, so that if they need help in any situation, and certainly my son with the diagnosis, I just didn't know what that was going to look like. So he might need help. Nobody wants to help somebody that doesn't communicate well, isn't how should I say, be able to speak in a kind way and confident and clear way. And so that was so important for me, that they both learn how to be good advocates for themselves. It just, and I didn't really, circling back to the labels for a moment. Yes, the labels were useful in terms of letting you know the challenges, but really, I didn't hang those labels on my son. It was really, in these situations, you need to do this, or you need help with this. I told him what the challenges were and how we can work to get past those. I said, oh my gosh, he won't get up in the morning if I tell him everything that he's been labeled with. And I just said, I want him to work on the edge of his potential, whatever it is. I didn't have any big ideas about he must do this, he must accomplish that, he must be this kind of, have this sort of profession. It's whatever is within his skill set. I want him to work. I want him on the edge. I want him running that thing out as far as he can run.
Yes, yes. It reminds me of a t-shirt I bought for my son, my younger son. Like, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space. Because we want them to get there, right? Because on the edge, that's where your learning happens. When you're in the middle of the thing, we learn nothing. There's no adversity. There's no struggle. And, you mentioned that, being on that edge, then we help them navigate it, not do it for them. Because again, when you do it for them, they become helpless, and they're children who have, then they do things. They're capable of doing. And when the parents look at that label, well, because he has this label, now this child has regressed. Right. And they're no longer doing for themselves, because as a parent, we're choosing to do for them things that they can do for themselves. And that is the biggest disservice you can do for your child.
Yes, absolutely. 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 I definitely subscribe to that.
Yes, awesome. So that was born out of, again, necessity. And
Mm-hmm.
because your heart is so big, you're sharing it with the world because, we go through things to help other people, right? We never go through them for ourselves. We go through them so that we can empower the next person with what we've learned to help them navigate, different
Yes,
situations.
that's what happened. In fact, God spoke to me about that because I certainly thought I was going back to corporate marketing in 4 months, 6 months after they were born, something like that. But he's like, "Oh no, all of this that you're learning with your son, you're going to help other parents because all parents want their children to reach their full potential, and that's really what you are doing for him."
Mhm.
So you're going to be speaking. He really laid it out, and I'm pretty much doing the things he said.
Yeah, that is so exciting. It is because, and again, it's such important work. And I guess for you, it probably doesn't even feel like work. I don't even like that term work because, for me, it's just, I get so much out of it. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I get more than I give. So it
Mm-hmm.
never feels like work. It's just like, I almost feel selfish doing what I do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can definitely get lost in it, especially when you find what you really love, what you're really passionate about, and how you can serve people.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the Parenting 411, so it's a platform. So parents go to your website to learn information.
Well, they attend events. I'm asked to speak at conferences, and I do workshops. I have the Parent and Purpose Summit, which is a virtual event. I've hosted that in May of 2026. In fact, I'm going to be hosting a live event, which is called the Ministry of Mom Experience, which helps mothers of faith instill their faith and values in their children, and also lean on their own faith in the course of the parenting journey.
Oh, yeah, you've got to. I don't, without faith, I don't know where I'd be. So it's so important that we
Hmm.
tap into that because there's strength. I mean, whether or not you believe, we all have faith in something, right?
Hmm.
I have faith that this chair is going to hold on, hang on to me while I sit
Hmm.
here. So
Hmm.
when we put our faith in a higher power, it's just so much more liberating, I think. A lot of people
Yes.
think it's, bans you, but I think it's so liberating because
Hmm.
now you don't have to, you're not alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you just are able to hold on to that and really let your faith anchor you during challenges. That was the impetus for me to write my first solo book, Mother's Work, Pearls of Wisdom and Gems from My Journey, because I identified 7 anchors that I held on to during the course of that journey. And my intent with writing the book was to share my story, but also provide a blueprint for mothers to identify the things in their life. They may not be the same thing that I held to, but to find those things and hold fast to them during the journey. It's going to be a winding road. You don't know how this experiment is going to turn out. You're not going to know. You're doing things today and you have hopes for tomorrow, but you're not sure until several years later whether these things took hold.
Absolutely. And then, especially if you don't have a blueprint, you don't know what you don't know. So,
True.
tapping into the Parenting 411 will help give you that blueprint, will help give you some guidance instead of starting at zero and trying to
Right.
figure out because your child did not come with a manual.
Right. Right.
So it sounds like you provide just a lot of support and information. I mean, you go beyond information. It sounds like there's a lot of support and guidance
Hmm.
in embedded in what you do.
Yes, because I think that parenting by so many people is just something you're just supposed to know how to do, which is amazing. I just don't know why we will go to school, go into the best college, the best master's program to learn these other things. But when you're talking about shaping and molding a human that's going to go out into the world and influence it, for you not to make that investment of time to be intentional about what you're doing, because experiences matter, words matter.
They certainly do. And like you said earlier, children are always watching what we do. You know,
Yes. Hmm.
a young lady recently said, I was in a session with the mom and the daughter, and she
Hmm.
said, Mom, I see everything. And, she's autistic, so people would think, oh, she doesn't notice anything. Um,
Right.
Children are children. And the way a label presents in one child will not be the same way it presents in another child, right? You've met
Hmm.
one child with a label, you've met one child with a label. So,
Right.
and she mentioned to mom that, I see everything you do. Some of it I like and some of it I don't like.
Oh,
And
wow.
I thought, thank you for sharing that. The fact that she was confident enough to say that to her
Hmm.
mom, and even in my presence, I thought, oh, wow. So mom was like, she told me, didn't she? I said, well, she's expressing herself, and let's use that as information, and
Right.
then ask, okay, what are the things that make you uncomfortable? And because again, it doesn't mean that we'll necessarily change those things.
Sure.
It just means now you have information as to how what you do, how you present makes your child feel.
And your child will feel better having been heard, even if the outcome is that things aren't going to change or they're not going to entirely change. Just knowing that they were part of the conversation really is affirming and empowering for them.
It is. It is. We all want to be seen and heard.
Hmm.
And first and foremost, your children should be seen and heard. Gone are the days when, people talked about children should be seen and not heard. Let's see and hear them, because that culture of children, the ones who are seen and not heard, they're the ones who don't function well in society.
Oh, absolutely, because they weren't allowed agency to speak. And so when they become adults who don't speak and advocate for themselves.
Absolutely. Or those, or become antisocial type people
Sure,
who
sure.
don't, they, commit crimes and do
Hmm.
really heinous things. So we want to be mindful of that. There's a study that showed children who don't have the opportunity to rough and tumble play and to interact and to, have all those experiences, they're the ones who society fears the most, because of how they didn't build empathy, and it just becomes a scary road down, scary
Hmm.
path.
Yes.
Yeah, you talked about your book. Can you show it to us, please, so readers will know, our audience will know what to go. Oh, beautiful.
Thank you.
And I love the title. I love the title.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, very. And where can they find your book?
Yes, that was the next thing I was going to say is that I'm offering a free copy of the book, just pay shipping and handling, but they can visit mothersworkthebook.com. That's mothersworkthebook.com. And not only will they get the book, but they will get some extra bonuses, a free webinar on communicating with their children. It's called Do You Hear Me? Staying Connected in the Chaos. And a few other items they're going to be able to get as well. So visit mothersworkthebook.com and grab a copy.
Awesome, awesome. And you've talked about connection a lot. How can parents develop that? I know, yes, we talked about keeping them off this social media, too much of it. Again, we're not
Hmm.
saying off totally, but what are some other tips that you can give to help with that connection? Because I think, well, everything is based on that connection. So if we can put that foundation in, that would
Hmm.
be very helpful.
Oh, sure. So I have a formula. It's called Make Room for the Magic. And when I'm talking about magic, I'm talking about magnetic, authentic, gracious, intentional connections with your children. And so that starts off with being available. Make yourself available to your children. And when you do, be attentive and affirm them and give them agency to communicate themselves. In my the Parent and Purpose program, we walk through each of those elements individually and talk about how to do that. But a major tool that I do recommend to parents is special time. And with young children who are still at home, preschoolers and below, you're able to do that every day, a small pocket of time. And usually at that age, about 15 minutes is all they can handle, but you expand as they get older. But that's their time. You talk about what they want to talk about. You play the game they want to play. You're engaging and you're connecting. And then you just expand on that as children get involved in school and have activities. Then you may be able to do it once a week, or, like with teens, it might be an hour, and you're spending that time. But the important thing is to be plugged in with them. And what I find is that when you spend that time with your children, regardless of whether they've misbehaved that day, if you still go through with special time, it really helps them to connect with you, first of all, in a different way, but it also helps to fill a need, because a discouraged, misbehaving child is exactly the one who needs special time. So you don't penalize them for that. Yeah. And so that is so important. And science has shown that quality of time spent is really a bigger driver than quantity. Now, I don't want to say, okay, don't try to spend time with your children, but that targeted time really does matter. Even if you spend a lot of time with your children, going here, there, shuttling to extracurricular activities or other activities that the family is involved in, that's time spent, and that's not for nothing. But carving out that appointment with your child really shows that you value them, and they're worth your time, and they're worth investing in.
Absolutely. And for the parents who say, I don't have time to do that. However, if they engaged in a challenging behavior, you would make the time. So let's just do it on the, like put it at the beginning, so that you're preventing these other things from happening, or reducing the time that you would spend engaged in managing a challenging behavior.
Yes, because you have to remember, when you're spending special time with them, they're able to see you in a slightly different light. You're not just the person saying, pick up this, do this, eat this, we're going here, giving orders. Mm-hmm. They're able to see you as a different kind of person, and actually see you as a person with emotions. And so it may not even be conscious, but they may think twice about pushing back every time that you ask them to do something. They then get to see, they recognize that, dad has feelings, mom has feelings. Let me help her out. Let me do this. So.
Absolutely. And all of that is neuroprotective.
Yes.
You're giving your child that, it makes them more resilient. They feel loved, they feel heard, they feel seen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is such great advice, Miss Carol. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to thank you. Well, if there are any last words, you have about a minute. If you want to share something, any final thoughts?
Sure. You talked about connection, and that is really the cornerstone of my parenting philosophy and what I teach in the Parent and Purpose program. And so what I say to parents is, you have to build connection before correction.
Yes, absolutely. Gosh, that is so deep. That is so deep. Please, parents, because if it's always do this, do that, stop that, they see you in a whole different light.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like you put a wall.
Yes.
You. So, yeah. All right. Thank you, ma'am. Our time has just flown by.
It sure has.
So feel free if you want to come again. And again, thank you so much for being here. And to our audience, thank you so much for watching. And we will see you next week, same time, same channel.